the schooling system. Anyone wants to guess how many weeks a year, kids spend in schools away from home?
Maybe 30? Yeah.
36 weeks a year. All right? In America, at least. In other countries, maybe more, and in some countries, maybe a little bit less. On average, how many hours kids spend a day in school-related matters?
So not only at school, like school-related matters here.
Exactly. I mean, they wake up at 6, they have breakfast, they take the bus, 1 hour of indoctrination in the bus, right? And then they get to school, 6, 7 hours, and then another hour in the bus coming home, and then you work on homework and stuff like that. Maybe you're done by 6. That's half your day. So on average, kids are in school for half of their day, half of their existence. All right? Now, who does the instruction? No. It's complete strangers that are teaching your children. We don't normally allow strangers to teach our kids, only at school. All right? Because we assume that they know what they're doing, that they know what they're talking about. Is that always the case?
Nope. No.
In fact, it's not the case most of the time, but we just look the other way. All right? What else happens at school? So these are the present values at this school. This is what's present, and I'll talk about what's absent in a minute. All right? So what else happens at school? When the kids are not in class, what are they doing? They're socializing. So socialization. What happens in the socialization process?
More further association with the same.
So socialization is about the kids learning the interactionism, learning, the social cues, the social norms, what to say and what not to say, and in front of who, what is accepted, what is not accepted, what is tolerated, what is not tolerated, what is celebrated and what is not celebrated, right? Completely filling their minds with the requirements of living a social life. Otherwise, you're going to be cast out, you're going to be rejected, you're going to be bullied, and all these other things. Okay?
Peer pressure and conformity then?
Definitely. Socialization will ultimately lead to peer pressure. And peer pressure may or may not lead to bullying. In many cases, it actually does. All right? But in the bigger picture, there's also culturation. Just coined this word. What is culturation? That is teaching the kids all the overall cultural cues beyond the limitations of socializing, okay? Society in general. Language, structure, profane words, gestures, references. You have to embrace the culture so the culture embraces you, all right? And this process ultimately leads to, someone said that word earlier, conformity. What do you conform to? You conform to laws, you conform to rules, regulations, boundaries, expectations, ideologies, right? You conform to a social structure, and that just becomes that. It always amazes me that, okay, I'm a bit of a rebel, but every single time a cop stops, pulls over a car, and I see them on the side, I don't think that this is an act of good versus evil. I don't think that this is a police officer who works for the government, who's doing his job, and is basically reprimanding someone who broke the law. I see this as the hired gun power of the elite keeping the masses in check. This is how I see it. Because, the power elite uses the police force at will. It's the DA and the judges that choose to, prosecute cases versus others. This is all done by human choice. Not everything that is unlawful gets prosecuted. Okay, this is a very subjective choice, and it's a choice that depends on the power structure, on power interests. It depends on who has the money and who has, one of the things that they always say in America, that justice is blind. Is it?
No.
Justice for someone who cannot afford an attorney, so they hire him, the absolute worst attorney in the system from the public defender's office, versus someone who pays his attorney $50,000. They don't have an equal opportunity before the law. Okay? And so, ultimately, you learn how to conform to these norms. Not just by watching the movies, by experiencing the binary vision in life in general. Okay? You are taught stories. You're taught stories about Thanksgiving. You are taught stories about American history. And there are components of that history that are not being taught, right? There's this book, Stories My History Teacher Did Not Teach Me, or something. Do you guys remember this book? Lies my teacher taught me, whatever, something like that. It's a very interesting book because it talks about aspects of American history that are absolutely real and things that actually happened, but are selectively sort of like left out from the curriculum, because the curriculum is supposed to help you conform, to think that, to have the illusion, it's a very useful illusion that citizens vote and that their voting, leads to actual change and transformation in government and so forth. We've always made fun of the Iranian democratic system because there is a body of individuals that determines whose nomination to an office is accepted or not. So let's say that 100 people, applied for the office to run for parliament. This office will eliminate maybe 60-70% of them, and the rest will basically be on the ballot. All right, and then the citizens will vote which one. So we always make fun of this elimination process. Do we have a similar elimination process in America? Don't get me started. Right? And so again, conformity is about accepting society, culture, laws, rules, regulations. It's about accepting the story that you are told. Okay? All of that happens at school. Now, what is absent? Hey, we forgot the element in the room, guys. Something else happens at the school. Let's not be binary, okay? What else happens at the school? Education. Exactly. Some learning. There's some learning that happens at school. Can we say that school is a place of education?
Sure. Yeah.
It's dubbed as such, but it is not a place of education. It's a place where some education takes place. All right? Home is the same thing. I mean, heck, when you go to the mall, there's some education that happens there as well, right? And with that, this learning also leads to training, especially if you are slightly older, high school, college. Education becomes training to prepare you for the job force. What is absent at school? Someone raised that point, and I wanted to emphasize that the schools, what most schools lack is practicality. Okay, and when you have been going to school for so many years, and the primary complaint that you hear from most kids is that I don't know how this is going to apply to my life. What's going to happen when college comes? When college comes, you're going to be saying to yourself, well, finally, something that I can actually apply to my own life. I'm an engineer, I'm taking coding classes. Well, I can get a job with that. And when that happens, you will lose any interest in pursuing any of those fields of knowledge, because knowledge is important in and of itself. We've created a culture where school is intended for a purpose, and that purpose is not learning. It's not education. I agree with May that, there are some good teachers and there are some good school principals, and there are some good school districts who are trying to teach kids happiness and self-care and mental health and so forth. But that is not the intended purpose of the schooling system. Who created the modern schooling system, by the way? No. created the modern schooling system? Bismarck wanted to line up the German people. It was before Germany was created. He wanted to line up the citizens of Prussia to have an appreciation for the state, an appreciation for the king, to understand the history of the country. So he started telling, the government, kids should not be taught at their homes. They need to come to these clusters and to be taught secular knowledge and to be taught history and so forth. Now, the idea of the school existed for hundreds of years, but it was usually parents coming together in very small groups, and the parents did the teaching, and there would be like a village guru and a shaman and like the imam and the priest and some learned people that would work with the kids, neighbors coming together. Parents were still in charge of the education of their own children, but mass public education was invented. This is an idea that was invented during colonialism, right? But we can talk about that later. This is not what I wanted to focus on. What I wanted to focus on is that innovation comes when people start loving the subject in and of itself. When they start appreciating poetry without thinking, how is poetry going to feed my kids? That is when innovation dies right away. That is when creativity dies. So schooling system doesn't want creative people. The schooling system wants obedient people. And we will polish some creative people as we wish and as we will in order to serve the means of production. And I will demonstrate that again in a few moments, right? What else is absent in general? I would say mentorship, family, support system, right?
So critical. I don't know. I'm not that critical of the schooling system. Maybe it's
You don't have to. You can disagree with us. You can disagree with us. Hey, remember, we're all products of that system, one way or the other. And we should not be binary either. This is not all or none. We are just pointing out to some aspects that most of us, maybe not all of us, most of us experience at school. When I was at school, I'm away from my parents for 9 hours. Okay, so I can say that my parents are not in the picture. My parents do not dictate what I'm being taught. It's the Department of Education. My parents may come argue with my math teacher, why did you give him 7 out of 10 instead of 8 out of 10? But that's really all they can do. My parents may interfere when I get bullied, right? But they're not asking the bigger questions here. What kind of culture at school enables bullying to happen in the first place? I don't think that we're able to answer that question. We are trying to deal with it. We're trying to fix its consequences, but no one is asking the question, what type of isolation leads kids to start bullying each other? So it's okay for you to disagree. I want you to look at the bigger picture here. What's going to come out of this discussion matters a lot more than the particularities of that discussion. I want all of you guys to participate. What else did you feel is missing? But let's look. So we're looking at a problem from this side. Okay, let's look at it from this side, because this is a class about learning how to do philosophic thought. Do you think that it is right in any sense or appropriate in any sense that the one remaining parental responsibility, which is to feed the kids, is now being delegated to strangers as well? You see how messed up this can ultimately become? Of a wider problem, right? And so this is not a critique of people who work at public schools or teachers or even politicians, right? This is a critique of a culture. This is a critique of the binary logic. And I'm not interested in changing the school system, okay? I'm interested in finding out what is it that I need to do with our kids to protect them from losing their faith. Because this, right there, is a recipe for disaster. I will demonstrate that to you in a minute. Yes?
So, the school system is teaching kids things that you do not like 100%, but they are decreasing the chances these kids are going to be binary in their way of thinking about society based on your own values, what does not match with other values. The reality is, we live in a society that's quite diverse, and the pervasive culture is not consistent with our culture. These public schools are helping kids be familiar with other thoughts that are not acceptable to us, but these are the people they're living with.
So if what you're saying is categorically true, then the more we school the children, the better and more civilized society becomes, and more accepting and tolerant of others. Is that the case? I know that is intended. It's intended to be like that. I know that's a very useful thought. It's a very exciting thought. But in the real world, there's also kids who go to school, who brought guns with them, and you go shoot up everyone at school, their own friends and their own classmates that they've been with. If you read the story of the 3 kids from Columbine, it'll absolutely boggle your mind. How many of those mass shootings happen in the public school system in America? Hundreds every year. Hundreds. Not 5 or 6 incidents.
So a weakness in the system
Mhm.
does not negate the role of the role of the system.
But we're not, our job here is not to try to replace the system. Our job is to try to ask the questions, does that system facilitate kids losing their faith or not? That's all I'm trying to do. You know, this is not a class about the educational policy.
So the parents being distracted from their children and working all day long is a disease that the school is trying to fill. But the school did not create that, does not dictate that both parents have to work and be distracted from their children.
So instead of saying there's something wrong with society that we need to fix, we're just saying, well, it's broken anyway, let's do what we can to pick up the pieces. So instead of stopping rape from happening, we're just going to build as many organizations to help battered women.
When the school feeds kids, it's because there's some kids where houses don't have food.
Mm-hmm.
It's not because it's depriving parents from the chance to feed them.
The same can be said about contraception. When we, remember that debate that happened, about 15 years ago, and the Catholic Church was involved in that debate. Should we make contraception available because kids are having sex anyway and they're having unprotected sex, therefore we need to provide them with contraceptive means, or by providing them with contraceptive means, we're actually encouraging them to have more unprotected sex.
When we do the vaccine for the virus that causes cervical cancer, we should not think that we're encouraging kids to have sex at a younger age. You provide the vaccine. Even if some people can decrease their fear of having early sex.
But what if this is what the graph looks like? The more you provide kids with contraception, the curve of premarital sex increases so significantly. How can we not make the association and do something about it? And a similar curve, I can put any x and y axes here. The more you provide the kids with food at school, the less parents will make meals for their own children. I can go on and on and on and on. Does that mean that we ignore one and focus on the other?
I think kids who have good hot meals at home will be less interested in school food.
Oh, they will be interested in school food because school food is not as healthy as what mom gives them. It's macaroni and cheese.
And pizza.
And pizza. Yeah, it's not healthy. If it was healthy, no one is going to touch it. But anyway, the point is we probably have to work on both. We probably have to work on the culture of parenting, but we also have to work on what schools should or should not provide. But again, guys, this is not our debate here, is it? This is not what we're trying to debate. We're not debating, education policy. We're debating the absence and presence of certain factors at school and how that impacts our children and how that impacts people in general as they grow in life. Okay? I wanted to talk about mottos. Someone talked about individualism earlier. What are some of the mottos of individualism that are used in America today that you hear all the time? My body, my choice. Okay, very good. What else?
Don't tread on me.
I haven't heard that one.
Self. Yeah.
Don't tread on me. I'll allow it.
You only live once.
But you can live once with others. I'm talking about very individualistic statements.
Me, myself, and strong, independent.
Be yourself. You do you. Well, just do it does not imply individualism. You can do it as a team.
Have it your way.
Have it your way.
My way or the highway.
It's all the fast food commercials.
My way or the highway.
Only God can judge me.
Only God can judge me. Only God can judge me. Man. So here's what's happening. We take those kids, we isolate the kids from every possible support system. All right? And we put them in an environment that teaches them good things, but also teaches them harmful things. And as we do that, we fill their heads with mottos that whatever it is that comes to your mind, instant gratification, be who you want to be who you are, follow your passion, don't listen to the archaic teachings of your parents, portray parenting in the movies as oppressive mom and dad, telling their kids what to do, crushing their potential, keeping them in the conservative traditions.
Total idiots
Or idiots, or people who are fobbish, or people who don't understand the culture from a completely different generation, completely unsophisticated, whatever you name it. All right?
Oh yeah, the whole nobody understands me.
Nobody understands me, of course, except my peers, who are exactly like me in the same boat. All right? What does this serve in the end? So you have an individual that is not connected to a family, that is not connected to a culture or a tradition or a history, that is very individualistic, that pays so much attention to what they want and what they desire to do, right? In the absence of mentorship, in the absence of a support system or moral values, being completely socialized and taught how to conform. What kind of system does that person benefit so much? The industrial system. This person is gold for capitalism. Why is this person gold for capitalism? I'm a capitalist, by the way, so don't think that I'm saying communistic things tonight. All right. Why is this good for capitalism? Because you're a gear. You're a gear in an engine with no attachments. The best employee, you watch the movies, right? Who's the best cop ever that outperforms everyone else? What's that? I thought he said RoboCop.
The guy who was divorced 3 times.
Exactly. When his mom calls him, he doesn't take her calls. She lives in another state, right? He cannot sustain a relationship. He lives by himself in an apartment, usually in New York City, all right? No attachments, no friends, a near sociopath. That is the most effective cop. And I know that this is sort of like an aggrandized, sort of like, with the artistic license in the movies and so forth. But think about Intel. The guy that has to take 3-week vacation every year in order to take his family to the Bahamas is not as good as the guy that goes 6 in the morning and leaves at 11 p.m. He's more productive. He gives the company a lot more, than the other guy. The guy that has values, that will say no to certain things, that will say, oh, this is haram, this is, against my values. Is not as useful to me as an owner of means of production than the guy who has absolutely no value. The guy that has parents, that has, that needs to be with with his kids' rehearsal, people like that, even though, they are everywhere, but in varying degrees. The more I trim their feathers and isolate them as much as possible, the more effective they become for the engine of production. All right? Is there a conspiracy, by the way, that I'm referring to here? There's no conspiracy, guys. There's no 5 people that sat in a room somewhere and came up with this, satanic plan. Okay? We're just trying to describe reality. Reality that sort of lends itself to the machine of capitalism and production. All right? Is it easy for someone like this to lose his faith or not?
Yeah.
Why? Okay, let's make a list. Easy to lose faith. Why? Number one, work becomes God. Okay? Why does work become God? Because who am I meeting at work every single day? It's not my cousins.
Superiors.
It's not my best friends that I grew up with. It's my classmates. I'm sorry, it's my workmates, my colleagues. These are the people that I spend most of my time with. All right? Remember in the plantations in Louisiana, in the South, plantation owners, they used to implement this policy where they cut up kids from their parents. So they will take the little kids from their mom, after 3 or 4 years, the mom takes care, nurtures the kids. Now the kid is relatively independent. They would take the kids and put them in another plantation or sell them in the markets. And then the owner of that same plantation would actually go to the market and buy an equivalent number of little slaves and bring them onto his plantation. Why?
This is easier to control them.
They gotta cut up all these social relations. You're not a good slave to me if you have to worry about your mom and you have to worry about your brother and you have to worry, about family considerations and history and stuff like that. You were not supposed to speak any language except the language of the slave master. You're not supposed to practice any religion except the religion of the slave master in full conformity. Okay? Ultimately, what is it that the slave master wants? Production. He wants you to just become a machine. And a brainless, mindless machine that just does what it's told. And I'm not saying that the modern system is a system of slavery, but it's indentured servitude. I mean, these people spend 12, 13 hours at work. Sometimes they go Saturdays and Sundays. They go on for 10 years without taking any annual vacations. When you think about it, work has become God. And if that guy gets laid off, what's going to happen to them? Depression, possibly suicide. Because you take the one thing that gave them meaning from them, there's nothing left. Yes? Of course, communism fell flat on its face in other aspects. So, communism is not an alternative to this either. But I do definitely see your point. That differentiation is really important. In what other sense, is this person prone to losing his faith?
Most of the input that is received, the mental diet, if you will, is non-spiritual.
Material input.
Materialistic.
Mm-hmm. Most of the nurturing is material. Mm-hmm.
Their sense of morality is all blurred. It's all foggy.
Foggy sense of morality. That is absolutely true. The environment
How about the belief that you're
supports it. Hmm?
the belief that you're self-sustaining, that
I mean, you're self-sustaining to the extent that you're able to attach yourself to the system. The minute you're unplugged from the system, you're dead, right? Yes.
evil sense of who the provider is. Like there's a bi-weekly
Mm-hmm. A skewed sense of who the provider is.
Values that serve the purpose of the capitalist or not?
So, 6 values that serve the capitalist. Yes. Again, none of this is definitive. Don't be binary. Okay, all we're saying here is that it increases the possibility of someone losing their faith. Can you still go through all of this and have, all right? The job of philosophic thought is to make available all the possibilities without the exclusion of any. Okay? Now, do you agree with me that someone's life like this is really, really miserable?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay? Like there's a sense of misery in the room. I think like everyone is depressed. You guys are so depressed right now. All right, so What is it that came to the fore in order to lessen the impact of this on people? So what did he? Drugs? We've always had drugs. We've had drugs for thousands of years, right? We've always had alcohol.
Yeah, but like a lot more.
There is a system, there's a platform that was created that may have mitigated all of this or some of it and gave people, the false sense of rejuvenation.
Unemployment?
You know what I'm talking about, right?
Unemployment?
Social media. Can I erase this, you guys?